Hi, everyone. Good evening. Well, thank you for being here. And thank you to those joining us on Zoom via our webinar this evening. My name is Shannon Gascoigne. I'm an Amherst resident serving as a community representative and chair of the SAU 39 Joint Facilities Advisory Committee. The committee is composed of a number of community volunteers like myself, along with elected public officials and SAU employees. Each member serves on a variety of subcommittees, bringing perspectives, questions, and considerations to the table. We represent a variety of backgrounds, including but not limited to that of parents, grandparents, finance, business and accounting professionals, public servants, marketing and communication professionals, technology professionals, and I'm sure many more that I am forgetting. We were originally appointed by the SAU board in late 2018 and charged with analyzing and providing recommendations regarding the state of our public school buildings in SAU 39, specifically in Amherst. K-8 enrollments were swelling to a degree that the district was exploring sending Amherst kindergarten students to Mount Vernon. We had a 15-year-old portable out of commission due to a fire, displacing 2 classes worth of children at Wilkins. Guidance counselors and school psychologists were using closets for office space. Severe temperature swings in all of our buildings, grades pre-K to 12. Leaky roofs with trash barrels collecting water throughout this building. And at the same time, in the Souhegan School District, a voter-supported architectural and engineering study was underway to plan for upgrades and maintenance of that building over the next 20 years. So with all this going on, the SAU board recognized there was a need for a comprehensive plan for the aging buildings in the Amherst School District and the need to align those plans with the work that would result from the design phase taking place in Souhegan. The JFAC, as we are called for short, was asked to offer recommendations regarding the needs, priorities, and sequencing of the work. Encompassed in the charge are Clark Wilkins Elementary School, Amherst Middle School, and Souhegan High School. We recommended that the elementary and middle school present the largest and most pressing needs, followed by several important projects at the high school. So we're here this evening to discuss the recommendations for the elementary and middle school. I will be joined at the podium this evening by fellow community representative Brian Coogan, Vice Chair of JFAC and Amherst School Board Representative Victoria Frazee, and Chair of the Amherst School Board and JFAC member Tom Gauthier. Amherst School Board Representative Beth Kuzma is moderating our Zoom webinar. Thank you, Beth. This meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be posted and made available to the public. We're also joined by Mr. Brad Prescott from Banwell Architects and Mr. Matt Wheaton from the construction management firm of DEW. Superintendent Steele is here as well, along with AMS principals Dr. Bernasconi and Mr. Rob Schlesinger. In the audience, we're supported by representatives from JFAC as well, Jeannie Lute and John Bucket. Thank you all for being here, and Christine Grayson as well, who will roam with our mic. So we'll begin with the information portion of the evening, which will last approximately 23 minutes. That's not exact. It will then be followed by a question and answer and discussion period. I will moderate the Q&A and direct questions to the appropriate expert or member of the SAU or board for response. So to begin with, following voter support in March 2020, the district embarked on an architectural and engineering study in the Amherst School District to identify needs, community desires, educational and student outcomes, programming and community concerns to determine and recommend a path forward. Ultimately, the JFAC recommended to the Amherst School Board a new configuration for Clark Wilkins, which involved a new elementary school on the existing site, bringing 5th grade back to the elementary school, and renovating the Amherst Middle School to serve students in grades 6 to 8. The Amherst School Board accepted this recommendation and determined it best to table a 2021 ballot initiative to 2022 to allow the committee and the district time to refine scope and cost and communicate with the public, which brings us to today. So you'll see this year we have engaged with Banwell Associates, our architect of record, construction management firm DEW, and site and civil engineers Time Bond. Designs have been selected and recommended to the Amherst School Board, which they have accepted. And we have our initial estimate of cost, which will be shared with you this evening. And we're hosting our public information sessions, which we will continue monthly through March. At this time, I would like to turn the floor over to my fellow committee member, Mr. Brian Coogan.
What Shannon didn't take into consideration with her 23 minutes is that I'm talking. It's never less than that. So we're going to take you through just a little bit about the facilities themselves. For those that are here in person, thank you for coming down. For those of you at home listening, come on down. We're going to do tours afterwards. So if you want to take a tour of the school, you can come in today. You can come in anytime during the school day and set up some time so you can take a tour of the facility and understand what is actually happening. Because what I find interesting is my sister-in-law actually went to school here almost 40 years ago, and it's pretty much exactly the same as it was 40 years ago. And that's one of the interesting parts about Amherst, great community, great school. And in fact, you feel like Bethany and Anna and Clark Wilkins, Anna kissed a pig last week. I don't know if anyone heard about that. There's a lipstick, I think, on the pig. And I think Amherst is doing a great job of putting a lipstick on a pig for a while now. I love the administration here, and I actually talk to my kids a lot. My kids hate me right now because I'm going to change their schools, they said. And I try to unpack it with the kids, like, why do you think Daddy's trying to change the schools? Like, what's wrong with it? Like, we love our schools. And they do. The kids love these schools. And they love the faculty, and they love the staff, and they love the administration. Kids don't notice things like cracks in walls, heat ventilators that don't work correctly, transmitters that might be located next to flammable products. Kids don't notice stuff like that. I mean, kids think we're awesome as parents, so like, clearly they miss a lot of things. So we're going to take you through a little bit of a virtual tour as best we can on screen. So Brian, give us a second to get that queued up. But what we really want to take people through is the experience of what's like here in the middle school. If you want to take a tour of Clark or Wilkins, please take the time to do that. But here's about 10 or 15 minutes just to view through the tour of the school.
Hi everyone, I'm Kathleen Murphy. I'm the Assistant Principal for Curriculum at Clark Wilkins.
Hi guys, I'm Meredith Pine, the Assistant Principal for Student Services at Clark Wilkins.
Hi guys, Anna Farrell, Principal here at Clark Wilkins. We are very excited for you to see our building inside, talk with some of our staff, and get an idea of how we are utilizing our spaces and our facilities right now. Thanks, enjoy the video.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Neil Vopel. I'm fortunate to teach 4th grade here at Clark Wilkins Elementary School. I love being out in the portables. I'm very fortunate to have my colleague and very dear friend, Mr. Dave Wright, work with me. Across the hallway, we have Mrs. Hartson and Mrs. Valancourt, part of our fabulous 4th grade team here at Clark Wilkins. I've been teaching in the portable for about 14 years. And I've been with the town of Amherst for about 22 years. So I've seen an awful lot in my time here, and I feel very fortunate to be a part of such an amazing school district. Being out in the portables presents a lot of challenges that I'm not sure everyone is aware of. The transition time for the students can be very demanding. The fact that we have one shared bathroom between 44 students can be a challenge. Finding a space to put their coats can be a challenge due to the very small coat rack that we have. In the winter, in particular, as amazing of a job as the custodial staff does in making sure that the ramp is clean of ice, there's usually 1 or 2 spills, and we have to get the kids all bundled up in their snow gear to go in and out. We have a shared bathroom that also has a shared printer for the both of us, because that's one of the places that we can put it. We have a computer cart in here, which we're very fortunate to have, and a smart board, and a lot of great things. The portables have seen better days. The ceiling sometimes leaks, sometimes the door swells because of the heat and the humidity, or because it gets so cold. So being out here presents a lot of challenges for us as a staff, as well as for the students. Sometimes a number of the students feel disconnected because we're not part of the main building. We like to tell everybody that's part of the Islander experience out here. So we are proud Islanders and proud Owls. Thanks for listening. Really appreciate your time and effort. Go Owls.
So, hi, I'm Mrs. Polio, the technology teacher at Clark Wilkins School, and for the past years, we don't have the spacing for me to have the lab that I originally had and was in place, and that has caused me to have to go onto a cart of a class set of devices. I just figured out that it's 17% of my time is spent simply distributing and returning carts in each class, and that isn't even all of it. The fact that I have to take a set of devices from access point to access point through the building slows down that Wi-Fi access and slows down things even further. And you know, with any kind of Wi-Fi disruption, it exacerbates with the fact that I'm moving from classroom and access point to access point. So I would say there's a huge chunk of time that should be instructional time for students that is being given over to simply distributing and returning the devices to the carts.
Hi, my name is Jessica Hartley, and I'm one of the speech pathologists here at Clark Wilkins. Here is my beautiful space. It's really not meeting the needs for my students right now. We are making it work because it's what we're given. I actually share a room with 3 other lovely ladies, and so at some points we can have up to probably 12 plus between adults and students in this room, all working at the same time, and that can be very challenging to focus, especially for our students and us, because it's loud in here, and we're doing the best we can, you know, to keep it down, but it's hard because, you know, a lot of our students, they have attentional deficits, maybe they have a hearing impairment, and really we're not really maximizing our time in here because, you know, these are kids that have skills, they're lacking skills that they need to be working on, and they can't focus in this room when there's a lot of other people here. So that's very challenging. You know, I really feel like this room is a revolving door, people in and out of it, especially as a speech pathologist doing evaluations. You know, I'm always constantly being like, all right, so what time can I see this kid? Is it gonna be quiet in here? And sometimes I'm in the hallway trying to find another space. So that's definitely, you know, having a new school with more space, you know, really would maximize our time and what we do here. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Robert Alwardon. I am the music teacher at Clark Wilkins, although I just really work at Wilkins School right now. I just wanted to let you know when they're talking about the space usage and if the space fits the needs of our students here. I would say the music room itself here at Wilkins is okay, even though it's really a classroom space, and so I can tend to interrupt some other classes or disturb other classes with the noise level in here. But we've made accommodations with who might be next to the music room. So if there's a new building, you know, as long as there's some thoughts about where the music room is. But what would be really great and helpful for all the students in our community is if the music room was actually close to the stage. And then of course the stage, which is such a sort of multi-used space by so many people, there's really some issues with the stage being, for example, if we have a show going on with fourth graders and we need to get all the third graders in there, it's whether, you know, is PE going on in there, is lunch going on in there? So it's oftentimes very difficult to access that space. And the actual stage itself is very nice, but it really, really needs an entirely new sound system. And we started to do some lights, but it could really use a huge improvement in lighting situation. Spaces, if the music room is close to it, so you can move instruments in and out, and just to make sure that all the microphones, even if we had hanging microphones or anything, so that people talking on stage could be heard. And this happens not just for music. We have guest speakers come, library has people come in. When we have artists in residence or people visiting from other schools, they're often needing to use the stage and the sound system. And we've been just having a lot of problems with that. So that would be a huge improvement. And new curtains, if we actually make use of the stage again. All that could be used and improved. So I hope hear what we're saying and hope you can be any help along those lines.
So I'm Becky Flynn, and I am one of the interventionists for literacy. And there's a space here for adults. We usually have groups of 4, so there's about 20 children in here receiving literacy intervention. So in literacy intervention, the children really need to hear sounds, be able to listen to the teacher's instruction, and then read quietly. So it can get really loud in here when there are 4 different intervention groups going at the same time. All of the kids are trying to read and listen to their individual instruction. So one challenge is the noise level. The other piece is if you have a space that is near the door, then you have a walk-through space. And what that means is as the groups change, if you are working in a corner near a door, the children actually go through your space to get to their other space. And so that is very distracting. A lot of our children that work in here are highly distracted. So that is a constant, you know, bringing them back in because they are curious who just walked in, and so they lose their concentration. We have mixed age groups in here. We have anywhere from 1st grade to 4th grade. So sometimes the 4th graders can get a little self-conscious about working in the same environment that the 1st graders are working in. So we have been dealing with that. And then the other thing is, due to the lack of storage, the space itself is very tight because this is also all of our storage space. And some of us are classroom teachers as well, so we have everything that we would need in this role plus any other role that you may have in this building. So this is our storage space, our workspace, and our intervention space. Sometimes it can be really hard to assess students in this environment when there are 4 other groups going on and we're trying to do literacy assessments. It can get very loud in here, and it's hard to hear what the answers are of the child and what the teacher is expecting. So sometimes we feel that it's probably not the best assessment environment for our kids. So those are some of the challenges that we find that are probably the most evident.
My name is Brendan Holt, and I'm the PE teacher here at Wilkins. Here at Wilkins, we have a multi-purpose room. We have half of the side for the cafeteria, and there's the stage, and then we have the other half, the gymnasium, that's used for physical education classes. In the middle, we're divided by just a curtain. So that presents a few issues for our students. Number one, it's spatial constraints, right? It's an undersized space in the gymnasium side, so we're just really not optimizing our opportunity for our students to fully access a PE curriculum to get the education that they need and that they deserve. Number two, they have a lot of traffic coming in and out of that cafeteria side when classes are going on. So there's noises being made, there's students coming in, there's adults coming in, they're making food in the cafeteria. So it's just an extra distraction for our students, and it just makes it that much harder to learn what they need to learn.
A couple of themes you hear throughout that presentation. Words like, it's okay, it's challenging, it's noisy, it's disruption, there's a lot of interruption. And oftentimes it's happening to some of the students that can't afford the disruptions, can't afford the distractions. And again, as I said earlier, the staff, the administration, the faculty, they make this such an embracive community where they find ways to rise to the level of what they have to maximize it, but they're stretching everything that they have. We're in a unique period of the last 2 years where we've all been asked to work differently, right? We've all kind of modified how we're working, how we're living, how we're taking care of our kids, our parents, or whatever. And we've used what we have, but that's not sustainable. The way we've been operating over the last 2 years during this period of COVID, it's leveraging everything you have, you can make do, but it's a less than optimal situation. And I think what we're finding here in the Amherst School District is that the town, the administration, the faculty and staff, the students, they've done a great job to do the best with what they have. Unfortunately, with specifically with the facilities are no longer meeting the needs of the community. We had, as recently as 10 years ago, had 10 portables between Amherst Middle School and the elementary schools. And we still use 2 portables at the elementary school today. We've had an ebb and flow of curricular students going through our curriculum, and we're seeing an uptick again. We've had more portables than that in the past, throughout the 90s. So we've seen cresting points in the town where the level of students in the schools have been higher. And what I'm observing is that there's more younger families coming to the community, which means there's more students that are going to be coming through these hallways. If you look at what the capacities were 30 years ago, when we're at some of our highest points, what you're now seeing is that the needs for space have changed, the actual laws have changed. What you have to provide students is different now. And as you saw in that video, we're using spaces for multiple purposes. We're converting closets into calm down rooms. We're using old classrooms for intervention specialists. We're putting music, not in a music classroom, but next to other classrooms where it may potentially be disruptive. And we're putting it very far away from other faculties like SK, where they should probably be co-located with. So we're trying to do our best, and I think the town has done a great job of doing what they can with what they have, but it's challenging, and it's less than optimal. And those are some of the concerns as a citizen of this town. I have concerns about being less than optimal. And I think there's an opportunity for us to think through how we can do it differently. Now, just beyond those concerns, the buildings are old, and there are some elements of the building, I'm going backwards in time. There are some elements of the building that are probably more concerning. So we have here on the upper left-hand side of the slide, technology is only ever increasing in demand in society. We use technology in almost everything that we do today. So our youngest students are almost being deprived of some of the education that they should be getting. As she said, 17%, probably closer to 1/5 of her time is just logistics. Not even providing education, she's just logistically trying to get around. If you look at the upper right-hand side, we're using a hallway to store paper. I don't know if you realize, you can see this is actually supposed to hang coats. We can't hang coats because we need to put boxes of paper there. If you were to go out in the portables, they don't even have a space to hang their coats. In the wintertime, they actually just leave large Rubbermaid containers so that the students, as they're traversing in and out of the building, that's where they put all their snowwear. They don't have that space. In those portables, I don't know if you heard, they said 44 students use one restroom. I have 4 people in my house. There's no way, there's 3 women, there's no way I'd get away with one restroom. It's just not gonna happen. Again, some of the special services, some of the occupational therapy, there's a lot of different things in this room. Is that really outfitted for what we need today? And again, here's that bathroom. That's not only a toilet, it's a desk in case you need to get some extra work done in there. There's a printer. There's a sink and some cleaning supplies in a bathroom. That's out in our portables. This is not really what I would expect a school to have. Like, you're printing the paper you're gonna give to students next to the toilet that they use to go to the bathroom. It's kind of an odd setup. I wouldn't normally see something like that. At least I wouldn't have expected it. And then again, down here, we're using hallway space, and it's probably hard for some of you to see, but for copiers, for storage, for supplies in the hallways. So time and time again, we're using space that's meant to be traversing the building to just store things. You heard in the video, there's a lack of storage throughout all of the facilities. So how are people supposed to work in an optimized environment that's most conducive to education when you're leveraging so much? You're so leveraged in the facility. At some point, that leverage breaks. And I think we're starting to hit an inflex point where it's starting to break. As I mentioned earlier, these portables that are, you can see in the upper left-hand corner, they've been there for probably 2 decades. We've got a security concern that we now have students and faculty that are actually outside of the security of the main building. That's a concern. You shouldn't have children that are traversing. They have to go from the building through the hallway all the way down just to get to the cafeteria. These kids barely have time to eat lunch. Again, you've got, this is a transformer. This apparently generates a tremendous amount of heat. They're generally located in one central facility in a building. Apparently in Amherst, we decided to put them throughout the building. We thought that was the optimal way to do it back in the 70s and 60s. Apparently this is not really the way you should be doing it. And you probably shouldn't be keeping paper and a copy machine next to a transformer that's emitting tremendous heat. It also doesn't have the proper HVAC to cool the facility. This is my favorite. This is supposed to be a firewall, but because our HVAC is less than optimal, they've now cut a hole in the firewall to allow for heat and cool transfer. But in a smoke situation or a fire situation, this firewall no longer provides safety for the students. It actually allows air transfer, which would increase your risk with fire. And finally over here again, our units, some of our HVAC units, they're so old and outdated, you can't even buy parts to fix them. So this is some of the current state of affairs of the facilities and some of the inside the guts. These are the things that the kids don't see. Like you saw from those teachers, they're great. They made the best of less than optimal situations, and that's what the kids see, and that's what my kids are yelling at me, like, Dad, don't try to do anything. These are things that the kids are not seeing. These are probably the things most of the community is not seeing. People don't generally walk the hallways. They don't look at these air transfer things. They don't know what a transformer is and that it potentially poses risk to the school. These are things that I'm not trained in this. I thankfully talked to some smart people that could help educate us on some of the deficiencies that the town now has in the schools. So we've been doing this, I think, what, 4 years now? 3 plus years? It's just I've aged a lot. And we're trying to figure out, some of the best ways to approach this. So as we look at some of the facilities here, you'll get to see, if those that choose to take a tour of the school, you'll get to see the middle school, which was designed during a very, we'll call a fun period of architecture, where they felt that the optimal strategy for students' educational rooms were triangles. I don't know if there's a Seinfeld episode about the triangles that you can look up, but this was a crazy idea. I mean, from a design perspective, the acoustics of it, the lighting concerns, the amount of wasted space that I don't know if any of you have a triangle room in your house. I don't have any, most of mine are square. But there's a lot of dead space in a triangle. You've got spaces over here that you can't use. Now, if we're working in a facility that was built in the 70s, the town's grown since then. Now you've also added special services that have new demands that require more space to provide to the students. that space in these little corners, these little triangle shapes, is completely wasted. You also have the barriers between room A and B that are conjoined. They thought this was a great idea to put these, what do you call them, louver doors?
Panel partitions.
Panel partitions, yeah. These things are a piece of junk. The acoustics here are terrible. Most of them don't work. So they were originally designed so you could open up the room and have two conjoined groups together, and then when you had to break out, you could close the door and focus on that. That's great when they work. That's great when the acoustics behind them work. Neither of those things function adequately for the school. So this was probably a poor design. As we added on to this building, because we needed more space, they went back to squares and rectangles and moved away from triangles. But the majority of the school is laid out like this. I don't know if any of you attended school in a triangle room, but I never did. And I've never stayed at a hotel that's a triangle shape. Most things are typically squares and rectangles. Now here we're getting into the middle school, and some of the things that you hear from the elementary school is consistent here. It's around space. It's the usage of space and the usability of that space. Again, in the upper left-hand corner, this is part of the kitchen where I don't know where you work. How do you get in there and try to actually do work? Everything is so bumped up against one another. I don't understand how we expect people to perform their job adequately. Again, we're using hallway space for printing and computer usage. I don't think that's an optimal space. I don't think that's where we intended people to be doing this type of work. The corridors, particularly the stairwells for the students to traverse, is really tight and narrow. If you've got kids going up and kids coming down, both with backpacks on, you can barely pass one another. So not only does it create congestion from the flow from classroom to classroom, it actually becomes a bit of a fire risk getting people in and out of the facility if necessary. Because some of these rooms, they're outdated and they no longer meet the needs of what academics should be for students today. So I'm not going to pretend to be an educator because I'm not. I'm not an administrator. I'm not a person that knows much about all this stuff. What I do know is that we're not running it effectively. Thankfully, we've been able to work with some very skilled people in the architecture and design and construction management that have been able to sit down with the administrators, with the teachers, listen to what the students need. They looked at the programming. They looked at how we're utilizing space today, and they listened to the problems and concerns of the faculty, the administration, and staff. They're listening to the students, which I think is really cool and unique. And they're hearing firsthand, what do we want to be? And then they're giving us a replay back of what do you actually have? And then there's a delta between the two. It's what we want and what we have. And right now, the wants far outweigh what we have. And it's not like this school is asking for a tremendous amount of things. They're asking for what the law is requiring us to do. And just based upon what the law requires you to do, the space is still inadequate. So we can't even really go above and beyond because the space doesn't permit us to do that. So they analyzed both the program at Clark Wilkins, and they've also analyzed the programs here at Amherst Middle School. And they'll share with you some of the determinations they made. There's some plans over here that you can take peruse and understand what we're trying to do. And again, please take the opportunity to walk the floors of these buildings, get an understanding of what they're like. Look into the dark corners, look at the edges of the doors, look at the windows, look at the heat transfers, I can't tell you when I first took a tour of this building, how many windows are foggy, you can't see through because all the gaskets are just gone. There's no more insulation between those two panes of glass. Shannon and I, we took a tour of one of the rooms that they had to keep one room really warm and another room with the door open so they could push the air through, and they had a heat blower at the edge of the room where the furnace is so it wouldn't freeze that night. And we have kids in that classroom. So we're using heat blowers on furnaces so we don't have burst pipes. In the same way we have a kid taking science class. And the kid next door is sweating because it's 86 degrees in there. So there's a lot of concerns that you should be taking into consideration. Take the time, look at what's happening here, and try to get an understanding of what's going on in the community and how we can think differently about doing things forward. It all is on the website, and for those of you that are here in the room or online that couldn't necessarily hear the video will be posted online too, so you can hear that again. And again, I encourage you to please come in, talk to faculty, talk to administration, walk the floors, and get a first-hand look at what's happening here at Amherst.
Hello, everybody. My name is Victoria Frazee, and I'm on the Amherst School Board, and I'm also the JFAC Vice Chair. I've been working with JFAC for a number of years, not quite as long as Brian and Shannon have been, but it's been a passion of mine. I have 2 kids who are here at Amherst Middle School, and so I've seen them go through Clark and Wilkins and seen the population rise. So I've been able to kind of see some of the changes that we've encountered in the last 5 years. So first up, I'm going to go through, and Brian did a great job of talking about our current conditions. I get to talk about the new proposed conceptual designs. So first up will be Clark Wilkins. And this is an aerial view of the conceptual design for Clark Wilkins. So I'm not sure if those of you in the audience can see this. Again, it's going to be on the website, or anybody on Zoom can probably see it a little bit closer. The first thing that I'd like to point out with this is that we're really reworking our elementary school to be all on the Wilkins site. So down on the left-hand side, you'll see Boston Post Road, and across the top is where Jones Road is. That can just help you kind of orient to the picture. What we're going to be doing in this design is changing the parking lot. So if you notice the area out in front, which is currently a field, is kind of configured to turn into more parking spaces. Then to the north side of the building, we show a bus pickup area. And to the south side of the building, we show a car pickup area. This car pickup area is slated for 75 car pickup. And you'll see that there's also a loop in the back where we could fit even more cars. And for anybody who's ever driven on Boston Post Road during school pickup or drop-off time, you know that the reason is that we're trying to minimize some of the traffic that we're seeing there. Okay, so this is, hold on 1 second. There we go. A couple things that I just wanted to point out here. The area up near Jones Road that's in the light green, those are the Upper Wilkins Fields. The Upper Wilkins Fields will not be touched with this renovation. And additionally, the field that's in the back of the school building would also not have the school building on it. It would still exist for use. And then to the south side of the building is where we would find playground space. And you'll also see kind of on the south side of the car loop is where the current pine trees are, where the kids play over the log and things like that. So that area still remains for anybody who's watching and wondering if that would remain. We're trying to keep our outdoor spaces usable for all of our students. You'll also see in the center of this building, there's a green, it's not a rectangle, but there's a green space. And that space provides a safe, contained area for outdoor learning. Okay. So this is the first floor conceptual design. Where you see the arrow is where the main entrance would be. This is very close to the current main entrance of the building. The white rectangle just to the top of that arrow is the current multipurpose room. So that multipurpose room is where we hold gym, and we also have our cafeteria. That room would remain. We worked with our architectural firm to determine that that would be a really good use of space, something that we could keep so that we could add on to our ability with our programming. So within this building, the yellow area is going to be a new gymnasium. This will be able to split our cafeteria and our gymnasium. Because we're adding a grade into the school and kindergarten, actually bringing 2 grades into the school, this will help with our planning so that we don't have like 4 hours worth of lunches that have to begin at 10 o'clock in the morning or something like that. So the yellow area is a lot of your specials that the kids go through. So you have a library, it's labeled as media on this, but just for everyone to know, that is the library. So you've got the library, you have a gym, you have art and music space in the dark green. Those dark green spots where that music is actually very close to the back of the stage that already exists at the multipurpose room. So that would be, as we all heard Mr. Alwardon speak about the aid that it would be if it was closer, it will be there. The orange large square toward near the arrow is the administration. So when people come into the school building, with many buildings that are relatively newer, we believe that there should be a secure entrance. And a secure entrance means not only that visitors are buzzed in, but it also means that once they come in the building, they're contained. They're not open to the entire school. this would serve that purpose. There would be administration offices right there in the front. The first floor would also house, in the light blue, it houses the preschool, the kindergarten, and the first grade. So for people who are wondering how we're going to put preschool through 5th grade in the same building, that would be how we do it. We're going to split them up. There's also special education services on this first floor, as well as on the second floor for those students who need to access those areas. And this is the second floor. Let's see, the second floor is obviously the other half of the grades. So we have 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades on this floor. We also have the ability in the future, far down in the future, to add on in this plan that we've developed with Banwell, which was really important to our committee when we were talking about the importance and the trend in Amherst. When we have built both at Wilkins and at Clark, they needed more space very quickly after they built. And so we're trying to make sure that whatever we're doing on this site is allowing us to be able to be flexible in the future. What you don't see here at Clark Wilkins is updated systems. So we don't show you the fact that we're going to have updated HVAC, that you get an updated roof, that we remove asbestos, and that any other system that's nearing end of life, including our fire response systems, would all be updated. And next up is AMS. So this is an even more detailed look at the floor plan, just because the school is a little bit bigger. The blue areas, the light blue in the center, are the rooms that used to be those triangle shapes. So what we're doing is squaring off these rooms. You also notice that in the area that's in, I should use your pointer. How does your pointer work? The red one. Okay, there we go. This orange area right here is the entrance of the school. Currently, for all those of you who entered the building today, you're able to enter, and then again, you're open to the entire school. A secure entrance would put administrative offices right at the beginning of the building. And this is our second floor. With our second floor, again, you see the blue areas here and here. Those were the classrooms that were triangles, and they're squared off as much as they can be within our current envelope. And then what we have also done is moved, this area is currently is a music classroom, both on the first floor and the second floor. What we're going to be doing with this plan is to move it over to here on the first floor. It moves it over to the elective area so that when we have students playing instruments of all types and singing, it's not right on the other side of a classroom. So as we heard at Clark Wilkins, that's also an issue that we have here at AMS when that happens. Recently, I was touring the building with our school principal just to make sure that I was understanding where all of our deficits were. And we were walking around, and we had walked for 40 minutes, and all of a sudden we're looking in a science classroom, and there's this loud noise. And I stopped and I looked at her, I said, "What's that?" Truly, like in the moment, truly being like, what on earth is that noise? Maybe there's like a lot of acoustics from upstairs. And she said, "Oh, that's just music across the hall." And I kind of looked at her and said, "What?" And sure enough, there was music across the hall that was, it was using bass, right? Music should use bass. But when you're in the classroom across the hall and you're hearing this, it is distracting. I'm sure the students have done a great job, just as Brian was saying, everybody gets through. But as an adult going through the building, to have the moment of saying, this isn't what it should be, it was really one of those eye-opening moments for me. Additionally, in these buildings, we currently have multiple interventionists, just like Clark Wilkins does, and the ability to change up some of these rooms would allow our interventionists to perform their jobs and to give the services to the students in the way that would be the best practice. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Tom Gauthier. He's going to go over the numbers.
Thank you, Victoria. We gotta make sure this doesn't fall. Shannon, back over here. Thank you. All right, so I get the fun part of the numbers tonight. I don't get any fancy pictures and toilet jokes. So, what was the arrow again? The pointer is the red dot. There we go. Perfect. All right, so we gotta change this. So you'll see, excuse me, there are 3 different prices on there that sort of waterfall down from what we originally, I don't want to say proposed, but what we originally were presented with a year and a half ago, what we looked at this fall, probably 3 months ago, and then what we looked at, what we're looking at right now and what the Amherst School Board has approved to put on the ballot for election day next spring in March. So to give you the brief history of the way that this worked was the LaValle Brentinger, the initial estimate there you see in that first column. Oh, I'm not going to shut it off. There it is. All right, so the first number there, the 66 million, that was strictly for Clark Wilkins, excuse me, geez. And really the basis of it was LaValle Brentinger had a very finite amount of funds to work with. So when they came up with an original floor plan for us, they didn't have a chance to really get into much detail. They didn't have a ton of information. And so they naturally estimated high. Well, this past fall and over the summertime, when we hired DEW, they had a little more time, they had a little more information, and they were able to bring that number down considerably based on the design, what we were looking for, and they certainly, they fine-tuned the design as well, as opposed to 9 classrooms at each grade in Clark Wilkins, going down to a number that's a little lower, and having some classrooms that can be transitioned from one grade to another as needed. And then lastly, that last column there, that is the number that we're going with for right now, and that is an SAU estimate on the cost. So you ask, why does the SAU have a lower number than the people that get paid to do this? And it's a couple of reasons. Number one, as we progressed, as we went through the things, Roger Preston, our facilities director, who has done an amazing job with the buildings currently and has done an amazing job of helping us prepare for what we're going to be putting on the ballot in March, he went through every single line item on the budget one by one to make sure, do we need it? Is it the right cost? Can we find a way to do it more cost effectively? And so we were able to come up with quite a few things that the SAU and the Amherst School District can take on, and we can do ourselves, certain hiring of people, certain part of the projects, and then he's also finding some things that were duplicates in there. So we fine-tuned that number down to 50 million from the 55.7. Roger and everybody that was involved in this is still very confident that number is more than what we need, but they settled on 50 because, as we all know, and if you don't know, you'll know now, once you put this on the bond, you can't go back into the coffers and ask for more money. Number one, voters will probably kill you for it, but number two, you just can't go over the amount of money that's designated in that initial bond. So that is where we came up with the 50 million. The second part that we added on as a school board as a recommendation from JFAC was the HVAC upgrade. Victoria touched upon it. It's a more energy efficient system. It's just a little bit better than what we were going for. It's certainly not the Cadillac of all HVAC models, but it's certainly better than the Ford Taurus that we might have had in there, somewhere in between those two. So it's a better, more cost effective, more energy efficient system. And then I'll touch on the solar aspect in just a minute in a few slides. So you're looking at Clark Wilkins after all of that at about 52, just over 52 million for the Clark Wilkins side of the project, which is the pre-K through 5, making use of the current multi-purpose room. To go through the AMS slide, stating the explanation, we did the same waterfall process from LaValle Brentinger a year ago, all the way down to the SAU cost estimates on there, and then you'll see that total is 30.8 million. We have the upgraded HVAC system in there as well at 1.7 million. The enhanced lobby and the addition, that is the enhanced lobby with the administration offices and that more secure entrance to take the place of what you see out there when you came in. Only adds about 2,000 square feet, I think was the rough number off the top of my head. Excuse me, 3,500 square feet. So it's about 3,500 square feet, but it just gives you that much better entrance, much more secure entrance, proper administration offices. And JFAC recommended that to the board, and our thinking between JFAC and the board was, if you're going to do this, do it the right way, do it the first time and get it done the right way and not have to go back and try to build an additional entrance 3 years from now. If anybody doesn't know the story, Clark Wilkins, when they first built the school, the Wilkins School, they built it without a cafeteria. 2 years later, they went back to the town asking for more money to build a cafeteria. Kids actually went home for lunch and then went back to school. So we're trying to avoid something like that with a lot of these projects. And then the last part with Wilkins, the site plan, excuse me, AMS, the site plan is just rearranging the entrance, the car pickups, the parking lot, all of the stuff outside of the school, reworking that to make it a little bit more efficient. And if Terry Beating, one of our board members, were here tonight, she would certainly tell you that the speed bumps can be worked on as well, as it scrapes the bottom of her car and likely others as well. When they leave school and pick up their kids. It also makes it safer for kids. Right now you play with Frogger with some of the kids going outside with 3 lanes of traffic to cross to get to their car. maybe a little hyperbole and exaggeration in there, but I don't think it's much. And if you ask parents that have seen their kids go through that, they would probably agree that that is certainly a concern as well. So overall, you're looking at $52.2 million for Clark, and then AMS 30.8, again, both with the upgraded HVAC systems, AMS getting the site work redesign, and then the secure lobby as well. And that is your base project of $83 million. So that is the number that the school board is putting on the warrant article to go along with our budget and our normal stuff in the spring. That $83 million is for the base projects of Clark and Wilkins. Now, since we last met with the public forum last month, and since JFAC and the Amherst School Board met back in August and September regarding this, there's been a lot of talk about solar. Certainly, green energy and climate is in the news a lot right now with what's going on in Scotland. So we are looking at right now adding a second warrant article for a solar energy project to put solar capabilities on both buildings. It is not something that we were comfortable including in the overall package right away. We think it's more of a nice to have as opposed to a must have. But right now we are still getting more information. Roger is working on getting a lot of this information for us. We have folks over on the Seacoast who have seen this put on other school projects. A lot of information is being gathered, but JFAC is recommending that we put on a solar additional warrant article to be able to add that project to the overall project. And this was actually something, if you came to the first public forum, that was mentioned as well, that there were people speaking on behalf of solar and the benefits of it and putting it on there. So there will be something that will be added as a secondary item if it comes back and the ROI is worth it in the board's estimate, but it is a recommendation from JFAC. And sometime between now and January, we'll make a decision on that, pending the information that we get from all the resources collecting information on that. Lastly, the question that everybody wants to know, what is the tax impact on an average home? And certainly this number is not guaranteed, but if we were to do a 30-year bond, 2% interest rate on the $83 million, this does not include anything with a solar project. For the average home in Amherst, which is about $480,000 right now after the recent valuations, and then with the tax rate that was just set last week on Friday, it was when the new tax rate was set, you'd be looking at a low of about $325 in that first year. It would go up to about $900, and then every year it would go down over the course of the 30-year bond to, what is it, about $600, $550, $600 per year added on the average home tax bill. So you can figure out what yours would be based on your home's value and looking at that. But $900 is the high over the second of those 30 years on a 30-year bond for an average home of about $480,000 for valuation. So I will let you look at that, and then I will give it back to Shannon.
Swap out Tom's new technology for my notebook. Well, thank you to everyone who presented, and we'll skip to next steps in a moment. But right now, I'm going to break for questions and answers. So as a committee, we're filled with community representatives. We work really hard to offer a balanced perspective and thoughts on what we need in our schools and align them with the plans you see tonight. But certainly there are questions and comments and concerns and things perhaps we haven't thought of. So we want to hear from you. These are your buildings for educating your children, holding events, recreating, chili cook-offs, Cub Scout meetings, you name it. They're more than just schools. So tonight is all about hearing from and informing you. What are your priorities and what would you like us to consider? So how we'll do this, because we have folks in the room who may have questions and we have folks on Zoom, I'm going to alternate. So if you're here tonight and you would like to ask a question, just raise your hand and Christine Grayson will bring the mic to you. It's really important that we ask and answer our questions in a mic so that anyone watching this later can hear it. We realized that after our first forum. Okay, so anyone in the room with a question? Okay, great. Gentleman in the back in the gray shirt. And if you'll state your name and your street.
I'm Joe Grazak, live on Carriage Road. The Wilkins revised plan is preserving the multi-purpose room. Is there anything else that's going to be preserved besides that?
That's a great question. No, in this current revised plan, the multi-purpose room is the only portion of the building. Is that correct?
Portions of the kitchen.
Oh, yeah. Portions of, yeah, I include the kitchen as part of the multi-purpose room. Yes.
So the rest is to tear down and rebuild.
Yes, correct. Great, thank you. Beth, do we have any questions from folks attending virtually?
Not yet.
Okay. Okay, great. Anyone else in the room? Yes, I see Mr. Ballard. He is our music teacher here at AMS.
This is more feedback. Is that appropriate time for?
Sure, go ahead.
In looking at the plan, I'm not sure if the proposed music facilities at the middle school meet the current and future needs of the music program, or meet best practices and standards for construction of those types of facilities. I worry that this plan may repeat some of the avoidable mistakes that were made when that addition was constructed about 18 years ago. Mr. Whitehead did correctly identify in that building, which is not that old, the major issues: inadequate storage space, inadequate instructional space, and some pretty poor acoustics. I think there are 4 key areas the design needs to address: appropriate space for performances, storage, a combined band chorus space, and then really looking at the future of the program. So looking at the performance space, which is something that Mr. Alwardon also flagged for Wilkins, we're sitting in the cafeteria of an elementary school that was conceived in the 1970s. Back when students in grades 7 through 12 were tuition in Milford. So the size of this room does look the amount of parents and family members we can bring in for public performances, as long as you have students participate in those performances too. For band and chorus, that means we have 9 performing groups currently. We can't put any more than 2 groups on the same concert. And even then, for some of those groups, we do not have adequate seating in this room for all of the parents and family members. Even if you take the 5th grade out, that still leaves 7 performing groups with the band chorus in each grade and jazz band. And also, this room does present some challenges for the theater club. They've now gone up to 5 shows in order to accommodate the types of ticket sales they have, which is a nice problem to have. But in a room that is designed to eat lunch, the logistics of trying to move sets, props, costumes, lighting equipment, sound equipment for every rehearsal, and then take it down so that the room can go back to its purpose for lunch, presents some challenges as well, similar to the challenges in the Wilkins multi-purpose room. Looking at the storage space, I know there's a possibility of using some backstage storage for some space there. But right now we've got a closet in room 105. We have a closet that used to be for 205 that was turned into an office. And so the existing space in those 2002, 2003 rooms is not showing up in the plans over there. And when you think about the stage at Sauhegan, there's a tremendous amount of backstage because the theater club does take up flats, set pieces, props, all those types of things. I did look at it, and I do wonder about the combined band and chorus space for the type of enrollment we have in our programs. If you look on page 37 of the SAU 39 annual report, you'll see that we've been averaging around 55–60% participation, which is wonderful, but those kids are all going to need a space to have their class in. And so while the shell of that room is big, how that floor space is used really does differ between those 2 different subjects. I'm also wondering, there's been the discussion about a future string program. And so is that going to compete for the need that band and chorus are already trying to share over there? Looking at the instructional space for music, if it's the instructional space there, that was the original music room in 1974. That's where I started off in 1999, there. But it's, we don't have pianos. We have pianos, we don't set them up because we don't have any place to put them, even with that large room downstairs. And so where are we going to put the drums, the pianos, the guitars, the ukuleles, all the hands-on things that we really do with the kids? I think moving towards looking at the future, we want to make sure this is not just future-proof, but present-proof for the types of things we have. And I'm not saying this to be fussy or to be a wet blanket, but we've got published guidelines that tell us how we should construct these types of facilities. The MENC Opportunity to Learn Standards, the NAFME Building, Equipping, and Renovating Music Facilities book, the Planning Guide for School Music Facilities by the Winger Corporation. I look at what Oyster River is currently building, what Nashua is going to do, what Keene did a few years ago. And I'm fully on board with the presentation that the SAU did, talking about having the best music program in New Hampshire and moving forward there, but we need the space in order to do that. There are, of course, cost implications of doing that. I understand that 2 schools needing work is presents some challenges, but I really do think if we're going to do this, we should do this right, and we should do it to spec.
Thanks for your feedback, Larry. And you're spot on. Doing 2 schools at once is tough. And these are certainly some questions and things that we've worked through and are trying to work through as a committee. So it's great to hear you tonight. And as I told you when we've talked on this matter before, part of our challenge is fitting all the programs that we have and all the needs that we have within the existing floor plan. It's not my sense that our residents are wanting to build a performance center in Amherst like they did at Oyster River, which I would also fully support, and I think that's great. But at this point, I think this plan is trying to leverage the space that we have within the footprint of the building. But I think our team is hearing you tonight, and we can definitely, keep having the conversation. Any other questions? Comments? Anyone online? Ms. Lu?
I just would like you to address the grade configuration, because we're sort of assuming that 5th grade is going over from the middle school to Clark Wilkins, and I just wanted you to talk a little bit about the rationale for that.
Sure. Yeah. So, when we started this work as a committee and we kind of looked at what was going on in the schools, the answer for why 5th grade was at Amherst Middle School wasn't because that made sense developmentally or, for the best educational outcomes of our students. The answer was, well, that's where we had the space to put them. So the new plan has the 5th grade going back to the middle school, back to the elementary school, where it's the most developmentally appropriate for 10-year-olds to be. When you look at Amherst Middle School today, you have students in the 5th grade as young as 10, and then you have 8th graders up to 14. There's just in my own home, I happen to have a 10 and a 13-year-old, and the development and the growth that happens in that 5th grade year, from 5th to 6th grade between that summer, is huge. And that's not anecdotally from me as a parent. Well, that was an anecdote from me as a parent, but our educators here in the building and administrators supported that as well. Does that answer your question, Jeannie? Yeah, okay, great, thanks. Yes, sir.
Just for context, 2/3 of this is the Wilkins project. And could we have some context on the square footage of the current building versus the proposed square footage of the new building? Maybe taking into account that we have extra class center. And then maybe the cost per square foot in line with standards.
Yep, great question. And I know that Mr. Prescott has all of that in his handy notebook that he's pulling out. So I'm going to ask Christine to take that roaming mic over. We'll let Brad answer that. Or Matt, excuse me.
Well, I'll talk about the cost per square foot. Are you specifically asking for the middle school?
No, more the
Oh, Wilkins. Understood. Thank you. So the elementary school, I think it was mentioned earlier that the numbers are conservative intentionally. There's not a lot of information yet. There's a lot of study. There's a lot of research to back it. We've leveraged our industry experience with hundreds of schools to sort of influence those standard metrics, understanding the current marketplace with volatile materials, in trying to benchmark, but a reasonable effort into, or science behind the numbers that we put on our in our estimates. So while I don't, I hope we never approach that value. It is the value that we backed into and looked at it from 2 different ways, and also against other schools that were built a year or 2 ago, and then bringing forward into 2 years from today. Did that address the cost side of it, or you want to elaborate, or want me to elaborate?
Yeah, you're looking for a per square foot cost, right?
Yeah, per square foot, but also just for context, we have a 25,000 square foot building, how about 35,000? 15 to 20?
Understood. So Brad will talk about the square footage. You want to know the square foot cost?
Yeah, I guess.
All right, you just start now.
We have that, and it's also I'm sorry, I'm gonna let you answer, Brad, but also on the program sheets online, which I think that's what Brad's looking at now. You can see that as well.
Yeah, I have the advantages of having the big book here. I get made fun of for having the big three-ring binder, but it does give a lot of information, and as Shannon said, a lot of this information is available for you online to scrutinize and look at carefully. But to give you the big picture, for the elementary school, the existing school is about 73,500 square feet. We're keeping about 9,000 square feet of that for the multipurpose room and the cafeteria and the stage. And then the finished building is somewhere in the neighborhood of 143,000 square feet. So it's basically 134,000 square foot addition to a 9,000 square foot existing building that's remaining.
We're doubling the size.
Essentially, yes.
And we're bringing pre-K, kindergarten, and 5th grade into the building as well. Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you.
Did I stall long enough for you to put the numbers together? Shall we talk about the middle school? That's crunching numbers over, actually it's just paperwork. So the existing middle school is 109,000 square feet, just over that. And we're looking at a 3,500 square foot addition. As they were mentioning earlier, the addition is for a secure entrance to the building. It's to relieve pressure throughout the building for educational services, to provide right-sized spaces for some badly needed special education and intervention spaces, to bring a grand total of approximately 112,700 square feet for a total building. But it started out right now as just under 110,000.
It is $370 a square foot, but that includes all costs, total project costs, construction, soft costs, engineers, architects, surveys, etc. All in.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Do we have anyone at home? No, okay. That's all right. We will have more of these. Our next public information session will actually be held at the Wilkins School. We're trying to alternate which buildings that we're having our meetings in and days of the week. So I know Monday nights don't always work for some people. So we'll, whatever night, December 9th is, that's when we'll have the next one. And that's kind of our thought process on these meetings. We are working hard to offer virtual options with our Zoom. So as you talk to your friends and neighbors in the community, we really do want to hear from people. We want to answer questions, hear your thoughts. I appreciate everyone who came to the mic tonight and asked a question. I would encourage you to take a tour tonight. Dr. Bernasconi and Mr. Schuttinger are here to lead those, should you wish to have a tour of the building. And again, December 9th at 6:30 p.m. at the Wilkins School will be our next public information session. You can visit us at jfac.sau39.org. We also have a Facebook page, although I'm told that Facebook is out and other things are in, but anyway, Facebook is where we have a Facebook page, and it's joint facilities. You can probably link to that off of the SAU39 Facebook page, I'm sure, or the SAU39 website. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting. If you are interested in a tour, feel free to go out to the lobby, and you will be met by Dr. Bernasconi and Mr. Schuttinger. And again, thank you for your time.